Tonight we are in the month of Elul, also known as the month of Virgo, and in Hebrew, Betulah. We know that this month of Virgo, month of Elul, is a month that can support and assist us when the time of Rosh Hashanah rolls around, that we can be in a better position to exercise some degree of control over the events that will be taking place in the coming year. Before we can make any progress in somehow having a dominion over the events that will particularly affect us, without the knowledge of the cosmic effects and influences over our environment and over our lives in particular, then we will then have to continue as we have for 2,000 years without any hope of changing the events, and despite our egos, despite the feelings that most of us have, that as long as it looks like we're in control, we're always in control. Of course, we're always in control until the day that we are no longer in control, and that day has always come in the history of mankind. But somehow Satan does an excellent job and does a good number on us, and always convinces us that who is not in control and who does not decide the events of the future. But without a consciousness and acceptance, and here I say acceptance, we must surrender. I say you don't have to surrender to religion, you don't have to surrender to God. But there's one surrender that is required before you can move any further, and that is a surrender to an acceptance that you are and I are and we all are not in control of our lives. Certainly we're not in control of our health, because nobody can tell illness when to take a holiday. Certainly we are not in control of our finances, of our relationships, because things happen when we make every effort to avoid the pitfalls. Then what is left? Where do we actually exercise some control? The answer is we do not have control. However, the Zohar and the teachings of Kabbala provide us with a methodology by which, after we have accepted the idea that our 4%, 3% Satan consciousness, the consciousness that we're usually operating with, is not the idea that provides us with decisions, provides us with the know-how to control our lives. With that in mind, that we do not want to surrender to Satan's consciousness of the 3-4% rational mind, then we then can achieve some degree, some measure of an ability to make use of the 94 or 95 or 96% that is available, that unfortunately, for the most part, we do not avail ourselves. Therefore, our intention this evening is to learn as much as we possibly can concerning the influences of Virgo and, of course, Mercury, which rules over the planet of this month, which rules as the planet of this month, and rules over Mercury. Rules over Betulah Virgo. This month is also referred to as Elul. Elul. Now, who established the month of Elul? And where in the Torah is it mentioned? And again, I just want to caution you, in case we had forgotten, that we can never, and I use the word never, we could never exercise any degree or measure of control over our lives if we do not have knowledge, because knowledge is the connection. Referring always to the verse number 4, chapter number 4, verse 1 in Genesis, which says that Adam knew Eve and she became pregnant. And of course, it sounds a little illogical that just by knowing Eve, she became pregnant. And therefore, the Zohar goes on to explain that the Hebrew word for knowing, the Hebrew word yada, is actually connection, because they're placing the word yeda, knowledge, information, in a frame of intercourse, meaning connection. Therefore, we assume, says the Zohar, from that verse, that only the knowledge, only knowing can produce a connection. Only knowledge can produce a connection. Therefore, it is essential that before we can achieve any measure of control, that we know. Therefore, our first question this evening is, where is and why is this month referred to by its Hebrew name, Elul? And where is it mentioned in the Torah? Well, there is only one place in the Torah where the word Elul is found, and that is in the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah, who lived during the time of the Second Temple, and in chapter 6, verse 15, it mentions the word Elul concerning the completion of the Holy Temple, where it says, "Vatishlam hachoma be'esim v'chamisha le'elul," and the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month of Elul, lachamishim u'shnayim yom, and it only took 22 days, says the verse, for this wall to be completed. Now, why is it so essential that we know how long it took to build that wall? And why does the prophet have to mention the idea that it was finished after 52 days? What would have happened if it was 53 days or 51 days? I don't believe any of us would have had any objection to its time frame, and I believe less concerned with how long it took. And so we'll leave that question in abeyance, because, again, for those of us who still believe that reading the Torah and, of course, prophets superficially, and believing that we can achieve some degree of knowledge is greatly mistaken, according to the Zohar, because the entire Torah, including the prophets, is written in code. And therefore 52 means something else. Elul means something else. Everything that says in the Torah means something else. And I know to some of you who are new to Kabbalah may be asking them, why write Morse code in the first place? Why not make it clear? But then you'd have to go back to the Morse code and say, why couldn't they devise some better method than just through a coded message? But there are reasons, and that is also explained, and that is not what we'd like to discuss this evening. But nevertheless, these are all clues to assist us in understanding what makes things happen, why these things happen, and why do they affect my life as they do. So we have the word Elul. Now the word Betulah. Betulah is the Hebrew word for Virgo. Betulah means Virgo. Why would, and where did, and how did this word originate to be referred to as this month that precedes Rosh Hashanah? Virgo. Couldn't they give it another name? The name originates with Abraham, the patriarch, when he authored the book known as the Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation, in which he designates this particular month as the Hebrew month of Betulah, Virgo, Virgin. Why such a name to such a month? Certainly there was no lack of Hebrew words that could also be used to connect this month with whatever Hebrew word Abraham had chosen. But obviously, again, by Abraham choosing the word Virgo, he provided us with a wellspring of information that we can make use of, that we can take advantage of, and not take advantage of just to accumulate more knowledge, but how we can make use of this information in changing our destiny. I say changing of our destiny. For those of us who are confident that we can change our destiny, then I'll use the word to improve our well-being. But in any event, this is why this information was furnished by Abraham the patriarch as well as the Zohar. Another feature concerning this month of Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, is the information that Abraham provides in the book of formation, the Sefer Yetzirah, that what created these months. In other words, the moment that Abraham stated that what created the month of Elul. What do you mean? There's a creation of the month of Elul? It's time. Following July is August. And you count according to the month, if you're following the lunar month of Islam, or the lunar month of Judaism, which also combines at times with the solar system. But one month naturally follows the next month. Why did Abraham say that certain letters created Virgo? Certain letters created the celestial body known as Mercury. Created. Insofar as Mercury is concerned, yes, we see suddenly an entity. But how do we associate time as an entity? And therefore we learn from the words of Avraham Avinu that time is also an entity, a physical entity. Although you can't touch it, maybe, you can't touch time, but know that time as we know it is not something which is abstract. But rather, there were forces that created this entity, despite the fact that for us to observe time in a physical sense seems to be obscured. Nevertheless, the fact that we do not observe it does not indicate that it does not exist. Therefore, Avram Avinu, when he says that a letter created the month of Virgo, created this month of Elul, he was referring to a structure, a physical structure, despite the fact that the naked eye cannot see it. Just like years ago we couldn't see the naked DNA. Years ago we could not observe the atom, subatomic physics, without a telescope. So in other words, the eye, by and within itself, is not a sufficient instrument to be able to detect. Therefore, the idea of the month as time, as a force, a physical force, as well as obviously a celestial or metaphysical force, is a reality. And therefore, Abraham provides us with those two letters, the Resh and the Yud. The Resh created the planet Mercury, and the Yud created the month of Elul, Betulah, Virgo. Why these two particular letters? Because these two particular letters instill what this month represents, and we shall shortly come to its definition.